So we've got the press conference going up. Now I'm not, it's 1 year since we went into lockdown 1. So it'll be interesting to see how he marks it. I've said before that even at the time that the lockdown 1 was too late, and every lockdown since has been too late. The only lockdown he's probably done right is this one, but again it was too late. But when he decided to do it, he did it literally overnight. He announced it and that was it. The following day we were in lockdown, which he should have done from day 1. But anyway, let's wait and see. We're on medium wave, so it's not going to be the best thing ever. Afternoon, Soph. So we're driving from Wigan. What answers that question? What's the cyclist doing apart from weaving?
Stopping, remembering, recognising the impact, but also the sense of marking what it has meant for everybody. It's like said fires and senses to stay at home, to give up so much over the last 12 months. Right, I mean, they could appear any moment now, so I'm going to ask you another question, and I may need to butt in, for which I apologise in advance. I mean, even at this point, it's almost impossible for the Prime Minister to predict what the next few months have in store. Certainly, and as we've seen over the last year, it's been very difficult to work out what happens next. I mean, what the government has been saying is that it's hoping with this roadmap out of lockdown for England, that it is hoping that that will be irreversible, that the plan is to
just need to get away from these bridges.
Slightly more definite course for the next few months, but they have been pretty clear that
tomorrow begins today.
Okay. The vaccine rollout continuing as it shows, dependent on there not being any new variant that comes in and completely disrupts plans. So I think there is a sense that the roadmap gives them a degree of not certainty, but perhaps direction.
Get underneath this bridge,
And suddenly those got the plan.
and hopefully the radio will sort itself out. When we get to the other side. Oh, Jesus.
Because here comes Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, following behind him, Sir Patrick Vallance from Christmas.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. When I asked you to go into lockdown exactly a year ago, it seemed incredible that in the 21st century, this was the only way to fight a new respiratory disease.
Oh, God's sake, MF, FM.
Yes, to all of
Oh.
us. But we did it together to protect the NHS, to save lives, and for the entire British people, it's been an epic of endurance and
Bad bit of driving there, by the way. The car that overtook this black car.
Birthday parties cancelled, of weddings postponed, of family gatherings of all kinds simply deleted.
Parks on the hash.
And worst of
crosshatch
all,
stuff.
in that time, we've suffered so many losses, and for so many people, our grief has been made more acute because we've not been able to see our loved ones in their final days, to hold their hands, or even to mourn them together. And at the right moment, we will come together as a country to build a fitting and a permanent memorial to the loved ones we've lost, and to commemorate.
I don't see the point of the memorial, I'm sorry.
for month after month,
Spend the money on the
our collective
NHS.
fight against coronavirus was like fighting in the dark against a callous and invisible enemy, until science helped us to turn the lights on and to gain the upper hand. And I want to renew my thanks to everyone responsible for the astounding vaccine rollout, which has enabled us to protect more than 28 million people across the whole of the United Kingdom with a first jab and administer more than 30 million doses in total. And I want to thank everybody for their courage, your courage, discipline, and patience. When people come to describe this epidemic to future generations, we'll tell the story of the heroes of the NHS and social care, of pharmacists, teachers, armed service personnel, shop workers, transport workers, the police,
What the
and so many
fuck?
others. But in the end, this was unlike any other struggle in my lifetime, in that our entire population has been engaged. And it's thanks to all of you, therefore, that we can continue on our roadmap to freedom. We will meet our targets, offering a first dose to everyone over 50 by the middle of next month, as well as those under 50 who are clinically vulnerable, and offering a first dose of vaccine to every adult by the end of July. And cautiously but irreversibly, step by step, jab by jab, this country is on the path to reclaiming our freedoms. Thank you very much, and I'm now going to go to...
All right, okay. That was pretty brief. That was...
Thank you
I
very much.
think you
First
thought it
slide,
was
please.
Winston Churchill then, to be fair.
The first slide is we've
slide to
just
back.
shown from September of last year, because the data from this time last year, as everyone will remember, we just didn't have the testing capacity to be comparable to what we have today. And as you can see, the rates of numbers of people testing positive for COVID in the UK is continuing to fall, but this is flattening off to some extent over the last week.
Yeah,
And
because
this is
schools and
expected,
colleges...
at this point of the curve, in terms of
We're testing loads of kids,
going
aren't we,
down,
now?
but going down more slowly. And we have always expected there to be some up pressure as people went back to school and some unlocking happened, and this is expected as part of the process. Next slide, please.
So it's over 2 weeks now.
Fortunately, the number of people in hospital with COVID, and this shows data right back to April of last year, it has come right down and is continuing to fall rapidly through a combination of everyone's efforts on the lockdown, which is driving the significant reduction in cases, and the vaccine rollout, which is particularly accelerating this in people who are in the older age groups and those with pre-existing health conditions. Next slide, please. And if we look at the number of deaths registered weekly in the UK, and these are the official deaths registered, again going back to this time last year, you can see the very rapid spike up that we had from this time last year, then really right down to normal rates, very close to normal rates over the summer, but then the first part of the second wave, and then when we got the new variant, second part of the second wave, which is now fortunately again due to a combination of everyone's work on lockdown, which is bringing the rates right down, and vaccines, which is protecting the most vulnerable. These are falling and falling rapidly, and as you can see, they're falling much more rapidly now than the rate of decline of the number of cases. Next slide, please. I think as we are at this point, this sort of anniversary of when lockdown started, I just wanted to show one additional slide to put this in context. Some people sometimes say, well,
Slides stop
did
working
this
on
make
radio.
how
Well,
much of
anyway.
a big difference does this make to overall mortality? What you have is the dotted line here shows the average number of deaths, the 5-year average, and you can see very clearly the very substantial spike we had in mortality at the first wave, a rather lower one in the first bit of the second wave, and then when the new variant started, a second very substantial spike on top of the background rate of people dying naturally. And the ONS data that came out today, this morning, said that there had been overall, since the beginning of the epidemic in the UK, 147 1,179 people. This is to their most recent data to the end of the 12th of March, who have sadly died from COVID. More will do so, but we are now on the downward slope. And then when they looked at the excess deaths, the number of people who died in addition to the number of people who would have died normally, it was 111,641. And I think everybody watching and listening to this will mourn every single one of those deaths. Next slide, please. But the rates of mortality are fortunately now falling rapidly, and that is due to a combination of the lockdown, as I said, and this is the other thing which the Prime Minister talked about, the steady increase now in the number of people who are vaccinated. And we now have a situation where the great majority of people over 65 have now had their first vaccine, and some people in the oldest groups are now receiving their second vaccine, or people who are frontline healthcare workers. So the vaccine program continues to be.
I still haven't decided if I want the vaccine.
Making sure that as these surges happen, which they are likely to at some point, they will
I'm
meet
entitled to it now as well, but I'm
vaccinated
still not
people,
sure.
which will help to significantly reduce the ratio of people who catch the disease.
I think it's
to the number of
irresponsible not to
people
have
who
it,
die from it.
but I think there's risks we don't know about in having it.
Patrick, anything to add? Thank you very much. Let's go to Sheila from Edinburgh.
How is the government planning to stop the spread of the third wave from continental Europe into the UK? Are there plans for lateral flow tests for lorry drivers entering the country? And hotel quarantine for everyone else coming to the UK from anywhere abroad?
Well,
Wow.
Sheila, thank you very much.
Sheila.
Yes, indeed, we must be.
She sounded like one of them voices in a lift.
Third wave, as Chris has
Third
just
floor,
said,
stationary.
sadly,
Woman
we're seeing on
going
the
out.
European continent, we are seeing distinct signs of a third wave. And
Yeah, we need to keep our borders closed because we messed up last year by not closing our borders.
And we in the UK
We let
have
people,
very
kids go on holiday
tough
to Italy
already.
when there was a pandemic in Italy at the ski resort where the kids were going. Ridiculous last year.
Do a passenger locator form, you get fined £2,000 if you fail to fill one in. And then when you get home from wherever you have come from, you have to get a test on day 2 as well as day 8, and again you can be very heavily fined if you fail to comply and you fail to quarantine at home. As for people coming from the 35 red list countries, there are indeed Sheila, there are indeed measures to take them directly from their point of arrival in the UK to hotel quarantine, where they stay for 10 days as well, and again have to do 2 tests. But as for your points about lorry drivers and hotel quarantine for absolutely everybody, I want to be clear with the public. We keep all these measures under review insofar as it's necessary to take extra
Right,
measures.
lorry drivers is
This
easy.
country against new variants.
The Europeans deliver the trailers, put them on the ferries, and then they get off and take empty or whatever other trailers back around Europe, and then the ships come over with no drivers, and then English drivers or drivers in England then pick up the trailers and whiz them around the country. In the meantime, they've dropped off other trailers to go onto the ferries or the Eurotunnel or whatever. It's not rocket science.
To Chris first, or who would like to go first? Patrick, go ahead.
I think if you look at the antibody response to natural infection, which is probably the best data we've got in terms of long-term effects, you see them really lasting pretty well out to 6 months. We don't know a long time beyond that. And I think the expectation is that antibodies to vaccines will also last for a reasonable period. We don't know exactly how long, because obviously people have...
I hope the Seat in front of me is not going to turn right at the end of this road, because we could be here for a very long while.
Antibody levels are holding up. The second thing to say is that the response to the vaccine is only part the antibody response. There are other parts of the immune system, T cells and memory cells and other things that are an important part of the overall response. And so I don't think there's any indication yet that vaccine effects are waning. That said, There will be a need to think about booster jabs for vaccines in the autumn, I suspect, particularly thinking about getting high level of immunity to cover things over the winter. I think the additional thing just to add is that the second reason for having to do a second vaccine is if we got a variant that had a relative escape from our current vaccines, and that would be another reason why we might need to do revaccination.
Thanks very much, both, and thanks, Tim. Laura Koonsberg, BBC.
Thank you, Prime Minister. The country's been through so much in the last 12 months, and so many people today are grappling with everything that's happened. Professor Whitty, Sir Patrick, and you, Prime Minister, can I ask if there's one thing you wish you'd done differently in the last year, what would it be?
Well, I kind of had a feeling you were going to ask something like that, Laura, and you're absolutely right. And I think in retrospect, there are probably many things that we wished that we'd known, and many things that we wished that we'd done.
We should have done lockdowns quicker and more thorough.
Because we were fighting a novel disease.
I let them off for the first one because it was new. But lockdown 2 and lockdown 3 should have been at least 2 or 3 weeks before they were.
The point I made to you before, perhaps the single biggest.
But they got the vaccines right. At least getting them in the people's arms anyway. So 6 of one off, doesn't the other?
It was about the potential for asymptomatic transmission, and that did govern a lot of policy in the early days, or that misunderstanding about the reality of asymptomatic transmission certainly led to real problems that we then really had to work very, very hard.
Because they could have done lockdowns, and if lockdowns didn't work, they could have lifted the lockdowns, but lockdowns do work, so we'll know for next time.
I mean, I just wish we knew then what we know now. I mean, we've learned an enormous amount about this virus, about how it transmits, about asymptomatic transmission, about how it spreads in different environments, about how to treat it. So there's a whole host of things that would have been nice to know then. The one thing that I think would have been really important earlier on is to have much better data on what was happening, and that would have required testing to be up and ready immediately, and it would have required the ability to get that information into a source and to be able to see it. We can monitor the epidemic really, really well now and understand when changes are taking place. We simply didn't have that at the beginning, and it was very difficult to know the speed at which things were moving, and therefore make decisions based on the real-time data, which we can do now, and that would have made a big difference, I think. I think the thing I'd add to that, I mean, I completely agree, also for those ones, is that our understanding not only of the speed of things in the UK was based on the fact we didn't have really sufficient data, and it wasn't until people started getting into hospital and dying we had a really better fix on how fast things are moving. So that was very important. But at an earlier stage, we had a much less of an understanding about how widespread the virus was in Europe, for exactly the same reason actually, because of the lack of testing in Europe as well as in the UK. And so in retrospect, we now know that the amounts of importation there were from Spain, from France, and from bits of Italy that didn't obviously have a problem, for example, but at the time we didn't have that information, and that would almost certainly have led to slightly different approaches to how we did things.
Thanks, Laura. Dan Hewitt, ITV.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You talked then about learning lessons, reflecting today. Do you wish you had locked down the country much sooner, both in the spring last year and then again in the autumn? And a second, if I may, yesterday ITV News uncovered the most shocking and appalling housing conditions in Croydon, which experts have said are the worst they have ever seen. It poses serious questions for the landlord, Croydon Council. But we know that just under 500,000 people in England are living in substandard social housing. What have you done as Prime Minister to help people living in poor social housing conditions?
Well, Dan, first of all, on your question about the timing of the decisions that we took, these are very, very hard decisions.
Mercedes driver.
Good outcomes either way, as I think all our viewers understand. All these consequences are very, very tough for people, and
actually undertook people on the hard shoulder, that Mercedes.
The interests of the British people foremost in our hearts, and in an effort to protect the public and to prevent death and suffering. That was what we were trying to do at all stages. Though doubtless there will be a moment to properly review, to learn lessons, and to make sure sure that we learn those lessons down for future pandemics of the kind that I'm sure that there will be. And on Croydon, which I believe is currently controlled by the Labour Party, of Croydon and everywhere else in London, building huge quantities of social housing and encouraging development of all kinds in Croydon. And I greatly regret that the story, the facts that you've uncovered just now. What we've got to do as a country is work together to build back better from the pandemic, and particularly to give people the opportunity not just to rent their home, their social home, and perhaps the single biggest thing we've done is increase the local housing allowance to right the way up the local rental average. So we put much more money into the pockets of those who need to rent locally to support those on the lowest income. One of the most important things we've done is support social housing. But in the end, you've got to build more homes, and that is the ambition of this government. We want to build 300,000 homes a year, and if you look at our planning reforms, everything that we're doing to drive that forward, that's what we can do. Croydon offers fantastic opportunities for more development, as I'm sure you know, as I well remember, and it would be a great thing if the current Mayor of London, putting too fine a point on it, Dan, addressed the issue himself, and that's what I would like to see. Let's go to Beth Rigby of Sky News.
She's back.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Finally, after a very long and hard year, the
She
end
got
is now
kicked off Sky because she went to a party.
But no one can doubt the huge scar COVID is going to leave on our economy, on public health, and on the lives of all our children. And to each of you, what do you think the main social, health, and economic challenges will be? And will we be grappling with the legacy of COVID in the past year for the rest of our lives? Thank you.
Bev, I certainly think that this is something that we will all remember and be dealing with in different ways for certainly my case, for as long as I live. It's been an extraordinary moment in our history, and a deeply difficult and distressing period. If I look at the problems that we face at the moment, in addition to the continuing healthcare threat that we face, and we must be realistic. There is another wave building on the European continent amongst our friends. We will see it wash onto our shores. I've no doubt. The extent to which it affects us will depend, as Chris was saying, on the strength of the fortifications against it by the vaccine program. That's one problem we've still got to deal with. But the legacy issue, I think, for me, leaving aside all the other backlogs, is education, and it's the loss of learning for so many children and young people. That's the thing we've got to focus on now as a society, and that, I think, is an opportunity to make amends, because there's going to be this year a group of kids going from primary to secondary school. There'll be perhaps 90,000, it's calculated, who will be behind in their basic literacy, unable properly to read or write. 90,000 more as a result of COVID. A huge, between 3 and 5 months of education has been lost, and of course the detriment falls the hardest on the kids who needed attention the most, and who have been unable to, who haven't been provided properly with the time and the support that they need. So that's why we've been working so hard as a government to make up that gap with everything that we've done through the holiday support, through investments in the catch-up funds, the 1.7 billion that we've put in, everything we've done to roll out laptops across as many kids as we could, and that's why
rolling laptops
in
across
addition to the work
kids.
that Gavin Williamson is doing, Sir Kevin Collins is the Education Recovery Commissioner, who is leading that work of recovery. And what Sir Kevin and his team are going to be focusing on is not just remediating the damage, repairing the damage, plugging the gaps. But I think there's a chance to learn from the pandemic and all the ways in which actually some teachers and some schools have done brilliant at discovering how you can teach through Zoom, discovering ways in which we can actually teach better in some ways through the technology that we've been using, but also maximizing our use of tutoring as well, so that kids who have fallen behind and kids with potential get one-to-one tutoring where we think that can make a difference. And I'm not going to pretend that everything's going to work first time. And we've been through a long period where we've got used to things not working first time, but we're going to persevere. And I think that we will start to make a big impact on those kids' lives. It's been an absolutely unimaginable year for school children, for university students, for everybody in education. They put up with incredible privations in order to help us, the whole country, get through. And our future as a country depends on us now repaying that generation, making sure they get the education they need. So that's for me, that's the biggest priority.
And just narrowly on the health side, COVID itself, I anticipate being with us for the foreseeable future. We'll have to deal with it in some form or another. Now, science has extraordinarily responded to this. If you think where we were a year ago, vaccines, drugs, diagnostics, and understanding of the virus, we will be able to bring it down to manageable levels, but it's not going away. So we will have COVID for the indefinite future. Second thing, which is a health issue from COVID, and we said this right from the beginning, this is one of the things we were very concerned about right from the beginning, collectively, is that the impact on other aspects of the health service will have some delayed effect. There will be people, for example, who probably delayed having screening, and I would really encourage people to take that up for things like cervical cancer, breast cancer, which run the risk of people having a delayed diagnosis. The same will be true for people who've not gone for routine or elective care they normally would. That's a medium-term issue, but potentially could be a significant one if we are not absolutely alive to it. And the third one, which again we recognise fully from the beginning, and one of the things that's made so many of the decisions very difficult, is much of what's happened in lockdown has the risk of making people who are on the borderlines of deprivation in more difficult economic and other circumstances. And we all know that has a massive impact on long-term health implications. So that could have really quite a long-term implication again if we don't take it seriously.
We're being by something that's got flashing lights, that's why we're going slowly.
Light into areas of healthcare.
But you can see down the bottom there that the motorway that I was going to go along, there's no movement whatsoever.
The same people who are affected
So
by
this
many
is a
other
better
diseases,
chance
and I
I've
think
got
we
of
really
getting
need to
out of
look
this.
very seriously, because these, the same people will be suffering from the diseases of
It's a major
smoking,
accident
of
or something.
diseases of deprivation, and so on. We've really got, I think, to take this very seriously as a country and as a community.
I mean, clearly today is a day to think about all the people who've died this year as a result of this terrible virus, but also the people who've suffered both physical and mental health, and all of the consequences that come with that, and the societal effects.
So it's 1725, 10.5
in
degrees.
I asked the British Academy to get their academics together to try and address the question, what might the societal impact, long-term societal impacts of COVID be? And they've got 200 of the brightest and best of the fellows of the British Academy, and a report was published today trying to give an evidence base.
Yeah, it's the police car that's holding us back.
And there are a number of things in there, ranging from the topics that have been covered from education to inequality.
There's police car holding the main motorway back as well.
I think
But this is the opposite direction to where all the traffic is stationary.
Policy might evolve.
See the flashing light down
but
the
what's
bottom.
important is that there's an evidence base.
They turned that
now
beautifully though, they both
and that
arrived at the
report, I
same
think, will
time.
be useful for policymakers going forward.
Thanks both. Thanks, Ben Riley-Smith, Telegraph.
162,000 here.
And also the government side, which actually picks up on Boris Whitty's comments there. We're a year into this pandemic. Should the UK government's policy objective now be to eradicate COVID, or simply bring down cases to the lowest possible levels?
Well, Ben, I think it's the second, in the sense that I'm not sure, listening to the scientists intently as I have for many, many months, I'm not sure that eradication makes sense in a globalized economy for one country alone. Plainly, as an objective for humanity, it's right, and we should aim for it. But that's my view. But I hand to Chris and Patrick.
I regret to say that I think the chances of eradicating this disease, which means getting rid of it absolutely everywhere, are as close to zero as makes no difference. We've only achieved eradication of one disease, which is smallpox, with a phenomenally effective vaccine.
Oh, there's a lorry there. Is that Crash?
A very long period of time, literally hundreds of years. I think everyone agrees we can get COVID rates right down. That's our aim, and to get cases of people who die and have severe disease as close to zero as we can. If we can go further, who would say no? But I think if you talk to anybody who looks at this really seriously, who understands how infectious diseases work, I don't think there's anybody who thinks eliminating from the UK or eradicating globally for any long period of time is a realistic prospect at this point in time.
I agree. I think get the numbers as low as we can. Don't expect this is going to disappear. Expect that there will be recurrences of infections, particularly in winter, and this will become a circulating virus as others have done over thousands of years. And I think this is unfortunately what we have. I think the chances of eradication, true eradication, i.e. zero, are themselves very close to zero, as Chris has said.
Thanks, Ben. Dominic Yateman.
Hi, thank you, Prime Minister. When the time comes, as you put it, to describe this period to future generations, how will we explain why Britain suffered the highest death toll in Europe in the deepest recession? And secondly, if I may, people who own holiday homes overseas, such as your father, for instance, will be exempted from the travel ban affecting everyone else. Would you advise people to buy a second home abroad if they want to have a holiday this year? And a quick one for the scientists, if I may. Are the new variants enough to explain why the second wave killed more people than the first?
Dominic, on your overall question about your sort of league table question, I think I will respectfully go back to the answer that you'll have heard from this podium many times, which is that the pandemic is not over yet across the world. We mourn the loss of every life that's been lost in this country, and we're going to continue to protect everyone to the best of our ability. But this is not over, and I think that international comparisons are premature at this stage. And on your second point, really about global travel and holidays, a lot of people do want to know about what's going to happen on the holiday front, and I know there's a great deal of curiosity and interest. All I can say is this is just too early to say, and so my advice is to everybody to wait for the Global Travel Task Force to report. We've heard already that there are for the time being, but we'll be able to say more. We hope in a few days' time. I certainly hope to be saying some more by April 5th, and that's the best you can hope for that.
In terms of the question you asked about Patrick may want to add to this, but it's very difficult to be absolutely confident exactly what happened. We're very confident that the majority of people who died in the second half of the second wave, which is by far the bigger one, were from the new variant. So first thing is that has completely taken over really in the UK. That is now the variant. So that is what has driven a lot of these. Now, working out what would have happened had the new variant arrived is really difficult to do, and I think anyone who claims that they can with confidence is misunderstanding the problem. But the height of the peak would undoubtedly have been a lot lower had that new, much more transmissible and probably more fatal, but that is more questionable. But transmissibility, I don't think, is questionable. Had that not arrived, I think the pattern of the second wave in the UK would have been very different. And what you can see when you see what's happening in continental Europe at the moment is the effects of the arrival of the B117 variant is actually causing problems in other countries as it has caused problems now. I share the PM's caution trying to do international comparisons, although I will make a technical point that if you're going to do it, it's probably best to concentrate more on excess or cause mortality, just because that's easier to compare between countries, but that's a minor technical point. The general point is we had a bad outcome. Many other countries had a bad outcome. What we want to try and do is to minimise mortality in the future and learn lessons from the past.
Thank you very much, Chris and Dominic. Emilia Casalicchio from Politica.
Thanks, Prime Minister. I've got a couple of related questions for you and one from scientists, if that's okay. The EU wants us to share our order of vaccines from a plant in the Netherlands called the Helix factory, and it's been making threats to impose a ban on the jabs coming to Britain if we refuse to share.
This is why EU is a bully boy, and I'm glad we're out of it.
To share them, which presumably would help prevent that third wave in the EU from reaching our shores. And the bigger question is, can we afford to share them? Meaning, if we give many million doses to the EU, will we still have enough to keep our rollout on course? And the question for the scientists are that there are fears that if the EU does place an export ban on some vaccines in the UK, we might retaliate and get into a kind of trade war. Some of those fears are coming from Pfizer, which has warned that if we stop selling vaccine components made in Britain to the EU, their production could grind to a halt, and presumably that would harm our overall vaccine supplies as well. So do you worry that a tit-for-tat trade war with the EU could put the UK rollout at any risk at all?
Well, thanks very much, Emilia. Let me go first and say that we're all fighting the same pandemic across the whole of the European continent and indeed around much of the world. And vaccines are an international operation. They're produced by collaboration between great international scientists. It's a fantastic thing to see how they've been developed, and we'll continue to work with European partners to deliver the vaccine rollout. All I can say is that we in this country don't believe in blockades of any kind of vaccines or vaccine material. Not something that this country would dream of engaging in, and I'm encouraged by some of the things I've heard from the continent in the same sense.
Maybe I'll say it's a miracle we've got vaccines. It's been an incredible effort by scientists from around the world. We've got companies, academic groups, others who've discovered, produced vaccines right the way around the world. And in a sense, the clue to this is in the title of the problem we've got, which is a pandemic. Every single one of the vaccines we have available depends on science from multiple countries for its intellectual origins, for its immediate recent development, and in almost all cases for its manufacturing and distribution. It's absolutely essential we see this as an international problem, and scientists collaborate the whole time. So Patrick and I talk to our counterparts in Europe the whole time. Scientists up and down the UK, all four nations in the UK, are talking to their counterparts in Europe and in every other nation as appropriate the whole time. This should be seen as an international issue.
There's no point in one country being immunised on its own. We need the whole planet to be inoculated. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Is that it?
And there he goes. That is.
Well then. So there you go then. That was Boris briefing on the first anniversary of the first lockdown and what did work and what didn't work. So we're going the wrong way round the M60 because there was a major delay the other way due to an accident or something. So we're actually going clockwise, and we're going to go through Stockport. We've already gone past Overbourne Bridge, past Trafford Centre, past the two massive footbridges. We've seen some interesting driving. We've seen a lorry with a blowout tyre, a beautiful roadblock, two police cars actually meeting at exactly the same time on two different roads, the slip road we were on and the main motorway, which was very impressive. All whilst Boris was doing his waffly. So we're still on the M60 and we are heading towards the exit we want, but we're going the long way around. So instead of doing a quarter on this, we're doing 3/4. But I think overall it's going to be quicker than trying to drive through the roads around the bit where the motorway was blocked, because everyone will be doing that. So that'd be gridlocked, that quarter of the Greater Manchester will be absolutely gridlocked. So going the opposite way, that's the beauty of a ring road, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend it on the M25 by any stretch of the imagination. Anyway, we're 3 miles from Stockport. 1742, 11.5 degrees on the 23rd of the 3rd, 2021. So we've got Ashton underline on the signage now, which is where we'll come off. We'll have to go through Stockport, go underneath that lovely bridge. As you know, I've circumnavigated this each way and found out that it's quite a big ring road. It's 30 odd miles. I think it was 33 miles or thereabouts. There's a plane taking off there as well. Don't see many of them these days. We're going to go into the viaduct. Didn't realise there was a slip road quite there. Anyway, there's the viaduct. Lovely. Going to get some extensive repairs to it soon, apparently. That was Stockport. They have some posh car showrooms here. Porsche there, and AMG Mercedes, BMW Mini. No doubt they've got a Tesla as well. Is there money in Stockport? Is that right? It's just where all the footballers live. A Jaguar there as well. So we're nearly at the end of our trip on the M60. Come out to that bridge made of cartas. There's been a marathon by the Carta Bridge. There's the Carta Bridge. It's made in Scotland from cartas. I know that's iron brewing. It's getting a bit rusty actually, to be fair. It's not good. So we're doing a steady 60 at the minute. Normally we come off here, but we're not coming off here. I say normally, don't normally come this way, but you know what I mean. Cars in this lane seem to be buggered off, so we'll pull back into this lane again. So this vehicle is doing like 55 mile an hour. For a BMW, it's quite slow. So we're 4 miles from Ashend line. Two-thirds of the hill from the exit we want. I'm just in a hurry now. Right then, so Ashend line. I'm not exactly sure where this brings us out, to be honest. Oh, it brings us out near the junction that we normally come out at. But this is, it's a staggered junction, this one, which is a bit weird, but there you go. What can you do? need to get into the right-hand lane because we need to turn right here. Actually, we need to go in the left-hand lane, turning right. So to our left is the Snipe area with the McDonald's and all that. Straight ahead eventually is the KFC. Turn right and it'll take us to the junction where we normally come out when we do the old coming out of the motorway, coming off the motorway even. So we're now back on our regular route. So you see the church that we can see through in the distance, and we're in the left-hand lane, which is what the lane we need to stay in to get round to Duckingfield when we get to the two churches and the telephone exchange on the roundabout. Ashton Baths in the distance with the tower. All the lights seem to be conspiring against me. To be fair, we made up some going the wrong way around. The M60 certainly helped us make up a bit of time. Toyota's in area. One thing I've learned about them lights is no point going through on red because you get held up at these lights, and those lights take longer to change than the ones we've just been through. So might as well wait there and then have a nice little drive down, and by the time you get here, hopefully they will have changed. Little on the left where the old co-op used to be. Got that Soviet style building in front of us, and to the right is Asda. Asda baby, yeah. Should get through this. I've just, did I blink then, or did those lights go out for a split second? Boris is starting to bud now, so enjoy the view of the church on the left while you can. It will soon disappear behind the greenery. Great. That's the War Memorial. Well, that Fiesta went through on red, didn't it? Because we were already on green. This Fiesta here. Last leg, the old patchwork road. Coming up to the lights, then past the tip, and then that's pretty much journey's end. Made it in time. That's annoying. It means the lights will not change for me, they will change for the cars going the other way. Oh no, I just literally just must have made that then. Skin of teeth. That's what can double yellow lights, no one will notice. That's the tip. Should be closing. Any minute now, he's looking at his stopwatch. I think he's gone in to close the doors. Last bit as normal. So that's it. Oh yeah. done. Not too bad timing either, considering everything that went on. So thank you very much for watching, if indeed you still are. And I'll see you all again next time. Who talked today? Carly, Toff. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again. Until then,